Thank you for listening to the Conformed to Christ podcast, where we seek to engage the mind, affect the heart, and call people to follow Christ. I'm Jay Jones, and I'm here with George Mays. Good morning, George.
Back again.
You are back. George, look what I have right here. You see this?
Yeah.
George,
they're not blue.
Is a new set of headphones.
Very nice.
And that was provided to us by a few people that made donations.
All right.
So thank you for donating to the podcast.
Yeah.
Able to get that final set. We got the other set. Like, what is that? Like a
blue
Dollar General brand?
It's 5 and below, I believe.
5 and below.
Yeah.
That was it. So now we've got the real things.
Right.
So very nice.
Very
so
nice.
Thank you very much for donating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very appreciative of that.
Any donations help.
Yeah.
Because
we got stuff held together in here by tape. We just
tape.
taped up one of the tripods in here.
Yeah.
Got a quarter holding a phone in, all kinds of stuff. Let's post some pictures later.
Okay.
So if you would like to donate, you can just go to our church website and you can go to the donate button because this is a ministry of our church, of Christ Fellowship Church. You just give through our church, and you click on that button, donate. It's going to take you to the screen, and on the screen on the drop-down menu, you can select Conform to Christ. That's easy. Easy peasy. So thank you for considering that. And, of course, if this has been a blessing to you, I talked to a guy yesterday, George, visiting your church, long-term visitor, because he's here for military. Very encouraged. He's been listening to this podcast for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was happy to hear that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So it's nice to know that there are people listening that they find us through the church, I guess.
Right.
And then they come across the podcast and they're able to listen to it as they drive to and from work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Yeah, we definitely want it to be an encouragement. And, we're exposing some of we were talking about it before, we're exposing a lot of the nonsense of our culture.
Yeah.
And so hopefully it's beneficial for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Weren't here last week because Snowmageddon hit a lot in Oklahoma.
It really was.
Yeah.
It was like 10 days below freezing. That's like that's a record.
We broke a record.
Yeah.
We shattered the record.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't just break it.
And it wasn't just below freezing. It was like sub-zero for a long time. That's crazy.
Yeah.
For around here. The houses aren't built for that here. That's why all the pipes are breaking everywhere.
Right.
People from the north, they don't understand. They're like, why can't you people in the south just tough it out? We deal with this every year.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Because your homes are built for this.
Right.
You have snow machines. They're made for this.
Mm-hmm.
So when this happens down here, grocery stores are like shut down.
Yeah.
Their shipments are shut down. Everything is shut down. Water tanks break. Like they don't build for the south, like for sub-freezing temperatures. So no, you don't deal with that.
I was out in the parking lot on Thursday, and this was after the second round of snow, and just watching people getting stuck in the street in front of the church.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to clear the road.
Yeah.
They do not have the machinery to clear the streets. So the Northerners will cut you a break because you don't know what but they're like you get to see what we deal with every year. Oh, Southerners can't take it.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, hit me up when you live in it's 115 for 30 days straight up north. Let's see when that happens.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Right.
So.
Fun times, though.
We'll forgive the ignorance.
Yeah. Kids had a good time out in the snow. This is the most snow I think I've ever seen living in Oklahoma.
Yeah, it was like 10 to 15 inches here.
And it stayed. It wasn't just here one day and gone the next. It actually was here for a week. So the kids had a good time.
I'm glad they got to play in it.
Yep.
It was a little too cold for a few days for kids to go out.
Yeah.
But they went anyway, George.
Yeah,
they came back in with frostbite on their cheeks.
Yeah.
Good parenting.
Yeah, they liked going out. Oh, Daddy, come out with us. I'll just take pictures from the window. Is that fun?
Frozen fingers.
Yeah, they were bundled up. They were. You remember a Christmas Story?
Yeah,
his little kid.
That's your kids?
His little brother can't lower his arms.
That's what you did to him. That's good. Yeah, we have snowpack on our streets, like I'm sure yours too. But
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I got to take the dog for a walk. The dog's been so cooped up, so I'm walking on it. I got my hands in my pockets, just walking along. It's a very nice evening. Sun's going down. Feet come out from under me.
Oh, man.
Boom, George, and I hit like right on my back. And, flat.
Well, at least you don't have back problems.
I tucked the chin. I tucked the chin.
Uh-huh.
And avoided the head smacking the concrete.
Yeah.
But I just laid there. The air knocked on me. Oh. I'm staring at the moon. I'm like thinking, that's a beautiful moon. Oh. And I'm laying there. I just laid in the street for like a solid couple minutes.
Oh, man.
I hope a neighbor saw it just so there was some enjoyment out of it.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah. And so
that's hard to come back from.
Well, I shook it off and I was like, oh, man. I'm kind of a champion. I shook that off like nothing. And go home, tell Angie about it. And then I wake up yesterday morning and I feel sick. I'm like, I got my body aches. My arms are hurting and my shoulders, my back. I'm like, what's going on? Is this COVID round 2? and then I remembered.
Yeah.
That's from when I fell.
Right.
Pretty humbling. Can't even fall, Drew. I can't even fall.
Nope.
I'm almost 40.
We're both gonna be 40 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's what happens when you get 40. You can't fall. You're gonna be consequences.
I don't know about that. I've been feeling this way for probably the last 15 years.
Oh, George.
Yeah, I hit about 27, and I just started falling apart.
Larry's over here laughing at us because he's still marching through the wildlife refuge.
Yeah,
like 20-mile hikes. He's over here laughing. You guys are 40, and Larry, what are you 60? What are you 65? You're 68.
No way.
Larry's 68. He still goes on 20-mile hikes.
Yeah.
And then he takes a break and has a little snack for a rattlesnake snacks. Larry's as tough as they come.
Yep.
All right, well, we better jump into this because it is Text-Driven Tuesday, which means we're going through the sermon. Let's try to make some good application from it. Just have a conversation about the sermon. So we're back in 2 Peter. You're still in chapter 1, and you did verses 5 through 11.
Yep.
So we'll have you read that passage, and then I want to jump in. So let's have you read, starting in. Just go ahead and start in verse 5.
Okay.
Yes, unless you want to go the whole thing.
Yeah, we can just do verses 5 through 11.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Simon Peter is writing this to churches in Asia Minor. They are dealing with false teachers who are teaching that you can live however you'd like. So they're claiming to be Christians, but they are following after whatever desires that they have. And so Peter is writing this to strengthen the churches under this kind of false teaching. So verses 5 through 11, for this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. For whoever lacks these qualities is so nearsighted that he is blind, having forgotten that he was cleansed from his former sins. Therefore, brothers, be all the more diligent to confirm your calling and election. For if you practice these qualities, you will never fall. For in this way there will be richly provided for you an entrance into the eternal kingdom of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Okay, thank you. Very good, very good. So, George, before we do jump in, set the context for us of what came before.
Yeah.
And then tell us the 3 purposes of this, and then we'll jump in.
Okay. Yeah. So what I did at the beginning of the sermon is I wanted to make sure that we understood that the order is important. And so we can't just start with verses 5 through 11 and treat that like it's standalone, like it doesn't have verses 1 through 4 that come before and kind of ground us. And so verses 1 and 2, Peter starts with the content of the gospel, that we are saved by faith in Christ alone, that we are saved by the righteousness of Jesus, not by our works. Verses 3 through 4 give us the power that we have based on the gospel. So we have his divine power in us. So we have all things that we need pertaining to life and godliness. We've been called. This is the effectual call. We have his precious and very great promises. All the benefits of the new covenant are ours through Christ. And so we have this ability that comes not from ourselves, but it comes from God. And so when we get to verses 5 through 11 and we actually have these commands, like how you're supposed to live, we need to avoid the error of thinking that we're doing this on our own, that we're doing this in our own strength, that we're doing this as some kind of initiative to do something that is pleasing to God on our own. It's all grounded in the gospel. And so the order is super important. You see this throughout the New Testament, that they front load their letters with the gospel. And then based on what God has done in us, for us, then we're commanded to do something. We're commanded to live. And so this is we have to avoid that error of saying, oh, well, these are things that we have to do on our own, and that's an easy way for us to get burnt out. Because we're going to fail in this, and our hope is going back to the gospel. And so what God has done for us leads us to, this is what you're supposed to do. So you can't ignore verses 1 through 4 and just take 5 through 11, because then you're going to have works-based salvation.
Right.
But you also can't just glory in verses 1 through 4 and all these magnificent things that God has done for us in the gospel and ignore that verses 5 through 11 follow. So based on what God has done for us, now we live a certain way.
Which would be kind of the big danger today anyway. Today. This was written a long time ago.
Right.
Same dangers apply, but we really see it in the American church, right? Or the Western church, I guess you would say, the Western church, that there's just a neglect of or making any attempt to obey any commands. Like there's commands,
right?
And so they're just kind of ignored. And people move on with their own self-made commands. Like people have their own ideas in their mind of what it is to be a Christian, and for today, in today's world, that could be different for every single individual.
Right.
But your structure of your sermon went around these two commands. So that's the beauty of expository preaching, is you're trying to make your sermon outline match the text.
Right.
And there's two commands in the text, so there are 2 points to the sermon. And the first is to supplement your faith. Is this like taking supplements from
taking some
GNC?
vitamins? Yep, that's right. Well, kind of, in a sense, because what is a supplement? It's adding to what you are already taking in through eating, what your body's already naturally producing.
Right.
So you take supplemental vitamins. Like you've already got some of these vitamins that you're eating, but you take supplements to kind of build on that. So these are kind of the building blocks of our faith, right? Going back, you asked about the 3 purposes of the sermon. Right. I wanted to make sure that I hit on these before I get into the outline. There's 3 purposes that I wanted to that I set out for this sermon to accomplish, because, like you said, we live in this culture where
hang on a sec. I just got a note slipped in. We're refilling the fire suppression system. Just so for the listener, there may be an alarm sound. They're filling the fire suppression, and there may be an alarm sound as soon as they. So I'm just warning.
Awesome.
Just a warning. If you're driving, don't crash when you hear it.
Right.
Hopefully, it won't be loud.
Awesome. Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
We're going to be on the edge of our seat, just waiting for this loud noise. So like you said, we live in this culture where we talk about the gospel, and you can go to any evangelical church, and they maybe are not bringing out the gospel like we would say. They kind of tag it on to the end, but there's this invite Jesus into your heart, walk the aisle, say a prayer, join the church, and that's kind of
That's it.
that's kind of it, right? And that leads to these casual Christians.
Well, now you can serve on the pastoral search committee.
Right. That's right. Yeah, you can
That-
serve. You
that's
can
li-
serve on committees.
That's what happens
Right.
in a lot of churches. So
You can teach Sunday school.
you got these
You can be a
people
deacon.
may or may not even be actually a Christian, and now they're calling the next pastor.
Right.
And this explains how kind of we see the church in the
Yeah.
state
So
that
you've got
it's in.
these casual Christians. We used to talk about C&E Christians. The Christmas and Easter Christians. They're gone all year, but then it's Easter, and all of a sudden they're here. That's kind of
There's not even C&E
that.
Christians
Yeah.
anymore.
That's kind of fading out. That was just an oddity.
Yeah, that's just
It's that if you don't come the rest of the year, you're probably not going to come on Christmas and Easter because it's just not important.
right.
So you've got, but these are people that still may call themselves Christians. They
Yeah.
may still claim I'm a Christian
Mhm.
and still actually believe that they're going to go to heaven. When they die, they're going to be with Jesus if they even think about Jesus. So you got these casual Christians. And so my purposes were to expose these casual Christians. So if there's someone who is, they're coming, even if they're coming to church weekly, but they go home and they live just this life of
A regular.
a regular secular
person.
life. Like there's nothing that distinguishes you from your unbelieving neighbor.
Yeah, that was my life before I
Mhm.
before I became a Christian.
Yeah.
In my mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me perfectly. I'd go to church every Sunday. I knew the Bible pretty decent. Like I could do pretty good at Bible trivia.
Right.
And it was kind of two lives. There's the life at home in church, and then there's the life at work.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So this is not a theoretical thing.
Right.
This is-
Yeah,
this is-
absolutely.
it's pretty prevalent.
Oh yeah. And so this passage, it's intended to expose that hypocrisy. Because you can't get away with being a casual, lazy Christian and actually do what Peter's telling us to do in this passage.
Yeah.
But the second is to to convict those casual Christians. Like, just because I say casual Christian doesn't mean that maybe you're not actually a Christian. There are those hypocrites that are not Christians. But I think that for a lot of Christians, there are those periods in time in your life when you kind of put Christianity kind of into a corner. And so this passage is meant to convict and call you back. And so that's the second purpose. The third purpose is to encourage Christians, because if you are a true believer, you will be convicted by this and you will be brought back. And so it's meant to encourage you to persevere,
Right.
to obey this,
Yeah.
to do what Peter tells us to do.
Right.
And in that way, like he says in verse 10, to confirm your calling and election.
Right.
So it was meant to it's not just a hammer, right? Beating people over the head. You might not be a Christian, but to encourage them to supplement your faith,
Right.
confirm your calling and election, obey. And true Christians will hear Christ's voice and they will follow him. They will obey. So those were the three purposes.
Yeah. It's good. Right. And so the structure goes around these two commands, and this first one is to supplement your faith.
Right. Yeah. So this the Greek idea behind this was like a benefactor.
The word supplement?
Yeah. It's this idea of like this benefactor who is providing for like a play. So you've got actors that want to put on a play, but surprise, surprise, actors are broke, right? And so you have this person who will give the money that you need to put on the play. So they're supplementing what's already there. So you've got the actors who can put on the play, but it'd just be them in their street clothes,
Right.
So the benefactor, he would he'd provide the money for the set and the costumes and the venue, right? So this you're supplying based upon what you already have. So the gospel is already there. So he says in verse 5 that for this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith. So your faith is already there.
Right.
The faith comes from God. And now you're supposed to build on that.
Yeah.
So you have to make effort to build on this. I use the illustration of my kids like to use Legos. They like to build with Legos. These are the Legos of the Christian faith. They're the building blocks. So you already have the foundation.
Are we still allowed to play with Legos? They're not like racist or anything?
I don't think so. I haven't heard anyone cancel Legos yet.
I know math's racist, so I figured
it certainly is.
Probably Legos would be too.
Yeah, you're trying to get me off into chasing rabbits, Jay, because I've got some things that I've heard just this weekend.
Oh, well, let's save them.
Okay, we'll save them
for Free for All Friday.
All right. But this is it. We've got the foundation of our faith. We've got the gospel, and that is God. God has done this. And now we have to make effort. And I think that,
it's like taking vitamins, right? You
already have like your body's already producing this stuff, but you take supplements to
amp it up,
boost that.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of Christians, and I think even for me, going back 10, 15 years ago, if I would heard someone say, you got to make effort to build on your faith, the first thing that I would have thought of is, man, this is works-based salvation. Like, this isn't what the Christian life is about. It's that, Jesus take the wheel kind of mentality, let go and let God.
Yeah.
That's not biblical Christianity. Biblical Christianity is God has saved you, and he saved you to do something. And so here you're supposed to do something. You're supposed to work. And if you don't, you're disobeying the commands of Christ. The scriptures are filled with imperatives. Those are commands.
Yeah.
And
there's a great C.S. Lewis quote I'm thinking of. You might have had it in your notes. I can't remember how it goes, but it's something like, good works isn't a basis for salvation, but good works is a symptom.
I saw that quote. Yeah, I saw
Something
that quote.
like that?
Yeah.
Symptom of salvation?
Right.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. And that's what this is. We've been saved. So based on verses 1 through 4, for this very reason, he says in verse 5, supplement your faith.
Yeah.
And so you're supposed to build on it. You're supposed to add to your faith.
You're leveling up.
That's right.
That's a video game term.
That's right.
For the youngins. The older folks, they might not know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you play games where you're
building,
you got to level, you got to level it, you got to build up your character. It's called grinding, right? You got to grind for those levels. That's kind of the idea of what you're doing here, because it's something that you continuously are doing.
You're pursuing it.
It's not a one-time thing. And I'm afraid that for a lot of Christians, they view salvation as this one-time event. Like the Southern Baptist Convention, they used to push this. I don't know if they still do, but years ago, you had to have your time and place, right?
Yeah.
When did you become a Christian?
Yeah.
What was the day and the hour when you became a Christian?
Right.
And that can be really discouraging for a lot of genuine Christians, because not every Christian knows the exact day that they became a Christian.
They call it a sunrise conversion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the sun breaks through, but the light's there, but where's the sun? And you don't really know exactly.
That's gonna be the case for a lot of people who grow up in Christian households. I would suspect that like my kids maybe will not have like a day that they become a Christian, because they've just always been learning, and it just dawns upon them one day, I believe this.
Right.
Jesus is my Lord and Savior. But that idea that it's this one-time event, you walk an aisle and you say a prayer, and that's your time and place. It gives this idea that you're done. And that's not what Peter is encouraging believers to do. Make every effort.
Yeah.
This is the idea of it. It takes work. It takes blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. It's like when Paul uses his race metaphors. You don't jump out the gate and then just like stop and
Right.
look around at the crowd.
Yeah.
Like you run
We run.
to the end.
I mean, look, yeah, you look at the illustrations that he uses. He uses a soldier.
Grinding it.
Yeah.
You're grinding. That's your life is a grind.
Right.
That's it.
It's not a one-time
Yeah.
you enlist and sit back and wait for a battle.
Yeah.
You're constantly doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Farmer,
Yep.
think of the failures of crops. If a farmer just planted the seed and then he went in his house and binge watched Netflix every day,
Yeah.
like that's not what a farmer does.
Yeah.
Yeah, running a race, an athlete. You can't be lazy. This is not weekend warrior stuff.
Yeah, that's why Jesus uses the term "follow me."
Mm-hmm.
It entails some type of activity.
Follow me daily.
Yeah, you don't follow him, he's going to leave you behind.
Yeah, follow me daily.
Well, not that he would actually leave a sheep behind.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Every illustration fails at some point.
Right.
But if you're not following Jesus, then
Yeah.
you're not with him.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like he's on a mission, and
Yeah, you got to take up your cross and follow him daily.
yeah,
You have to die to yourself daily, and this is not something that you just fit it in whenever you have time. You've got your hobbies, and you got your job, and you've got all these errands that you have to run, and maybe if I have time, I'll fit in a little quiet time.
yeah,
Like that's the Christianity, the Christian life. It's if you view your life as a circle, and you've got all these things that are kind of orbiting your life, school,
yeah,
work, the kids have, practice. Christianity is not one of those orbs that's orbiting your life. It is your life. Everything else orbits around that.
right,
Your faith is central to everything else that you do. And so Jesus is called the Son because everything orbits around him,
mm-hmm.
right? Like your life, everything that you do, it should be impacted by the fact that you're following Christ.
Yeah. So walk through this chain of virtue.
Okay. And I don't think that this is meant to be this exhaustive list.
Right.
Obviously, he's not hitting on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that the order is the main importance.
Right.
I don't think that's the main thing we need to be looking like. Okay, how does virtue turn into knowledge?
Yeah.
I don't think that you're necessarily building chronologically. I think it's more like the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Like there's not really an order to the fruit of the Spirit, as
Right.
if, well, this one's more important than this one.
Right.
This one leads to this one. I don't think that's what's going on. I think he's just, here's the things that we need to be building,
Uh-huh.
and it's kind of this general idea of what the Christian life looks like.
Yeah.
So he says that we're supposed to supplement our faith. So faith is already there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't produce faith. Faith is something that God gives to you. So
Yeah.
it's the very base that you're building on. You supplement your faith with virtue. This is the word that's used up in verse 3, excellence. It can be translated as moral excellence. So moral purity.
Okay.
So we need to be, when we see the holiness of Christ, that's not going to leave us unchanged. And as a Christian, we're going to reflect that moral purity.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start to be good.
Yeah. I saw this list, and really, it's, I mean, God is producing these things.
That's right.
I should have saved this. It was a testimony of a young lady who was a devil worshiper, but she
Okay.
said, I'm a devil worshiper. I don't really believe in the devil. It was
Right.
more like rebellion against God
Yeah.
type thing.
Right.
She said, she back then didn't even believe in God, so it was really like rebellion against who knows what. It's all,
Right.
messed up, but
Yeah.
I mean, she looks, terrible,
Mm.
piercings all over the place, tattoos everywhere. Or maybe it was pain, I don't know, but I mean, she looks goth, very demonic,
Mm-hmm.
the picture. And she said, Christ rescued me from this. She didn't go into detail about how she heard the gospel, but she said, Christ rescued me, became my Lord. And then she starts listing these things.
Mm.
I stopped doing drugs. I stopped fornicating. I stopped this. And it's just this big list of
Yeah.
like the things Paul says, Christians, you were rescued from these
Right.
things.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's exactly what George is talking about.
Yeah.
Stop this, stop that, stop that. Like people don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to stop all these things today.
Right.
Because they love those things.
Yeah.
That's what gives them joy and pleasure, and or temporary happiness and pleasure.
Yeah.
And then they find a greater joy,
Mhm.
and all those other things go away.
Right.
That's a gift.
Yeah.
That's given, and so Christians are to pursue
Yeah.
that type of moral purity.
Right.
That's what marks the world, right?
Mhm.
And we flee away from those things.
Yeah. I think that especially in the Reform camp, we teach the biblical concept of total depravity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of us, we still hold on to that after we're Christians. Like Christians are still totally depraved.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you mean.
We're not. Like we've been rescued.
Right.
We've been born again. We've been regenerated.
You're no longer a slave to sin.
You're not a slave to sin. Christ has broken the power of sin over your life. Now you're still going to sin. You still have the old man waging war against the new man.
Mm-hmm.
But the power of sin has been broken over you. And the Christian is not they're not alienated from God anymore. Like that's what total depravity is.
Yeah.
It's this blind yet willful rebellion against God. The Christian is not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So we should pursue virtue. So we have to be careful in all of these, ideas that we're tossing around. Not to be trite.
Right.
And to have, theological ideas, categories. But a Christian should pursue being a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
That's what it means to be virtuous. You're a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of people that think that they're good people because they're kind and they don't cheat on their taxes and they don't cheat on their wife and things like that. But for a Christian, when I say you're pursuing being a good person, it means that you're reflecting the character of God.
Yeah.
Like the image of Christ is being renewed in you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you are supplementing your faith with virtue.
Yeah.
With this moral goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be pursuing that. That's we shouldn't be lazy about it.
Yeah.
And be comfortable in our sin because I asked Jesus into my heart, so I get to go to heaven when I die.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need to pursue moral goodness.
Right.
But on top of that, we need to pursue knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So supplement your virtue with knowledge. And we've already seen this idea. This is one of Peter's favorite terms in the letter is knowledge. We have the knowledge of our God and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
We're to grow in that knowledge. And this is not just head knowledge. Like we can be really, we can get real comfortable with our head knowledge because we like to read books, right? So we fill up our head with knowledge. That's not what Peter means by knowledge. He means this knowledge that is personal, that's intimate, it's relational.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to know Christ, get to know him more. It's not a one-time thing. If I stopped getting to know my wife on our marriage day, I'd be a bad husband and we'd have a bad marriage.
Yeah.
And our marriage would fall apart.
Which does happen.
It does.
It's like the people stay married until their kids graduate and go to college,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're like, I don't even know you. You're a stranger.
Right.
The only thing they had in common was kids.
Right.
Yeah, you're not a good spouse if you're doing that.
Yeah. But the mission of a husband is to get to know his wife and to continue knowing his wife.
Yeah.
And because we change over time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep up with that. Like you got to keep knowing your wife. Now Christ doesn't change, but he's infinite.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're never going to run out of things to get to know about Christ.
Right.
We know his love. We know his grace. We know his patience in the gospel. But the longer you serve him and you get to know him, you know more deeply the love of Christ. You know more
Mhm.
deeply the mercy that he has and the patience that he has towards you.
Yeah.
And we'll never run out of that for all eternity. Because how can you exhaust an infinite being?
Mhm.
His mercy is infinite, and so we get to know him. We continue to know him, and we do that by going back to the scriptures where he's revealed himself, and we can get to know him more and more and more, and that just never ends for a Christian. And if you get lazy and you stop getting to know Christ, maybe you didn't know him in the first place.
Mm.
Because once you have a glimpse of Christ, how can you ever stop wanting to know more about who he is? So we have to supplement our faith with virtue with knowledge, knowledge with self-control.
What happens to a lot of people, I think, in our world is the excuse is used that they've been hurt by the church
Mm,
or people in the church,
yeah,
and then they like leave Christ.
right.
But you don't leave. You shouldn't leave. So I mean, maybe you're listening. You shouldn't hold against Christ the failings of
Right.
people. Right? He doesn't fail. He's he's never left a single one of his own.
Yeah.
He's always faithful. He's always good and merciful and gracious and lovely. And oftentimes, church people, we don't reflect him like we should.
Right.
Um, and but don't use that as an excuse to leave him.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Next is self-control. This is restraining your emotions, your impulses, your desires. Western church has a big problem with this one, right?
yeah,
Because we've adopted the world.
yeah.
We've adopted our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Our culture has no self-control. It just indulge in whatever. Usually, when you see self-control in the New Testament, you're usually talking about sexual immorality,
Yeah.
which we can never tire of calling people to sexual purity
Mm-hmm.
in the church, because people in the church are sexually immoral. So we've got pornography that runs rampant in the church. We've got people having sex before they get married in the church. We've got to pursue self-control, and again, we have to make every effort for it.
Mm.
Right? This isn't something that you can just fall backwards by luck.
So
in the
so
sexual purity, you have to pursue it.
here's a rabbit trail worth pursuing.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of women blasting the Billy Graham rule
Yeah.
as sexist, misogynistic, and
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Or what Mike Pence does, which
Mhm.
is not to be alone with another woman.
Right.
That's not your wife.
Yeah.
That's not just for men, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want to bring that up to those who say it's misogynistic,
Mm-hmm.
because women are sexually immoral too.
Right.
It's to keep people from doing what they do
Yeah.
when they're alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's to protect moral purity.
Yeah. It's the safeguard.
It's not just for men.
Right.
It's for women as well.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up and say
Yeah.
it's not a bad idea, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's not because you view the other sex as like an object or something like that. It's because you know that
The
human nature.
right. The
And-
world hears that and they think, oh, well, he must just think that he can't control himself around a woman.
Yeah. Well, what about the woman? That's my
Right.
question.
You don't give your flesh any opportunities.
Yeah.
Right. Because we need to have an accurate assessment of ourselves.
Yeah.
We sin.
Yeah.
And the reason we sin is because we like to sin.
Yeah.
And sometimes opportunities arise and you may have a moment of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to pursue self-control, to pursue these
And to have safeguards.
yeah, to have safeguards.
Yeah.
I feel like people have more patience with an alcoholic than they have with sexual immorality.
Yeah.
They'll say, well, it's, you don't, if you're an alcoholic, you don't want to go around a liquor store.
Right.
And they have understanding about that, but they scoff at people wanting to put any kind of fences around their lives to safeguard their sexual purity.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's not, our culture has moved so far
Yeah.
beyond. They think it's what would have been normal for like 25, 30 years ago is seen like as weird. And
Yeah, all kinds of sexual immorality and perversion is viewed as normal.
Yeah.
And the weirdos are the people that say, maybe I shouldn't be alone with a woman.
The same.
like where do we?
It's
like,
the same.
What kind of culture are we in where that's what you want to criticize? And there's all kinds of just degenerate sexual things going on in our culture, and people don't even bat an eye.
They don't care. No. So yeah, I just wanted to I just brought that up because the people that I'm seeing criticize this, these are Christian people.
Yeah.
These are Christian women.
Right.
That are saying these things. And
but I think that's good. I mean, because the world is going to look at people that follow like a Billy Graham rule, and they're going to think that they're prudish, misogynistic, just a guy who has no self-control. Like they view that in the opposite way of what it actually is. Like, this is a guy who has self-control, but they're viewed as someone who doesn't have self-control.
You know that Billy Graham rule saved him once, right?
Did it?
Yeah, they had staged. I'm pretty sure they staged when he was going to walk into his hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
They had a woman set up in there and a photographer.
Oh yeah.
And so he walks into his room, but there's other men with him because he never would be alone.
Right.
And if he wouldn't have followed his own rule, he would have been entrapped.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah. But I mean, saying this I want to encourage young people, because I know there's young people that watch this, and encourage you. I would rather be called a prude and misogynist than to fall into some kind of sexual temptation and sin. Like, don't let the world shame you into thinking that you're the weirdo, that there's something wrong with you for wanting to pursue purity. Pursue purity because you're pursuing Christ.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God."
Yeah.
And what price can you put on that? Like, here's infinite worth.
Yeah.
Like, you can spend 30 minutes looking at women online, or you could pursue purity and see God for all eternity. Like, which one is greater? Yeah. So don't let the world shame you into thinking that there's something wrong with you, that you're some kind of prude.
Good. Okay, let's wrap this section up. We got to move on to the second one because we're going long. We've been out for 2 weeks.
We've
kind of lost our rhythm, I think.
Well, I went long on this sermon. I actually had to cut out about a page and a half of my notes on the fly yesterday because I was looking at the clock. I was like, ugh, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to get this. I'm gonna have to go. So yeah, it was a little bit longer than usual. Steadfastness. That's just the idea of perseverance. Again, this idea that this is not one time. You have to pursue. You have to pursue this. You have to persevere in this. Godliness. This is again another word that we've already seen up here in verse 3. His divine powers grant to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. It's a word that can be translated as piety. Yeah. To be a pious person. That's a word that's fallen out of use, but I think we can bring it back. You need to be pious. It literally means good worship.
Yeah.
We're worshiping God with our lives, with our bodies. Are we giving him good worship? We need to pursue godliness. I like that chapter 3, verse 11, he actually brings out the second coming as a reason why we should pursue godliness. Christ is coming. There's going to be future judgment. Be a pious person. Pursue piety and godliness.
Yeah.
Brotherly affection. That's the word Philadelphia. Brotherly love. So we ought to have a particular love and affection for Christians, for our church. Even just this last week, I saw people posting on Facebook about, kind of degrading the church. Like, I've been hurt by the church. This is why I don't go to church anymore. Like, we need to pursue brotherly affection. Like, we shouldn't be criticizing the church. I've been in enough churches that are filled with people that criticize everything that's going on.
Mm.
Like that's not what we need to be doing. The church, the people of God, they are the people that Christ purchased with his own blood.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go around criticizing someone else's wife.
Mm.
Why would I feel comfortable criticizing the church? Like, this is Christ's bride.
Yeah.
I need to watch my mouth when I talk about the church. The church is not, it doesn't exist to satisfy my needs, it doesn't exist for me to get everything that I want.
Mm-hmm.
That's how people act around the church.
Yeah.
Like, this is Christ's bride. We exist for him.
When I was associate pastor, my job was to take care of a lot of administrative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not here. This is at former church. I feel like it was a good church.
Yeah.
But I feel like after a while, like my job was just taking all of the criticism, and I was like, okay, this is my role, so I can protect the preaching pastor from it.
Right.
And man, it just wore me out, dude.
Yeah.
And it was always the same people.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, it's just like, oh man, like,
yeah.
Are you just like sitting around inventing things to complain about?
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And then finally, love. This is the word agape. I think that this extends outside of the church. Like, we're to love the people in the church, but we're to love people outside the church also. And I think that means that we need to love them the way that God loves us, not ignoring our sin, not not affirming our sin, but sin in Christ. And so how do we love our world? We love them by bringing the gospel to them, right?
Yeah, good.
And being patient with them the way that God's been patient to us.
So now we move on to the second command, which is, I believe you had it phrased as to be all the more diligent or strive.
Be diligent to confirm your faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same word that's used in verse 5. In verse 5, it's not a command.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same word though. But down here in verse 10, it is a command. Therefore, be all the more diligent.
Yeah.
That's one word in the Greek.
To confirm your calling and election.
Yeah.
So here we have this word. You said, hey, here's this word that
all right.
Some just pretend it's not in the Bible.
Yeah. Or just redefine it.
Yeah.
Like, you can't ignore the fact that the word election is in the Bible. And it's not an English word. It's from the Greek, eklektos.
Yeah.
It's just bring it over. It's elect.
Yeah.
And and we have to avoid this idea that we can just make a word mean whatever we want it to mean to fit into our system. Like, what does election mean? We live in America. If anyone should know what election means, it should be the people that have elections every 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's choosing someone.
Yeah.
And it's not based upon them choosing us first and then we choose them. We the people decide who is going to hold the office, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, God doesn't look down the corridor of time and see who's going to choose him, and then in response to that, he chooses them, and we call it election.
Right.
Like, that's not the meaning of the word at all.
It's just it's philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just reinventing a concept. It doesn't
Right.
even
It doesn't make sense.
even mean anything then.
Like, what's the word election even mean? If we're just choosing God, why this emphasis on this word at all?
Yeah, you chose God, then therefore God retroactively
chose
you.
It rips all the meaning out of the word.
Yeah.
There's no force behind that word anymore.
Yeah, it means
you confirm what would that even mean, to confirm your election?
Who knows?
Make sure that you it would cause this kind of inward reflection. Did I really mean it when I? It's
like, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's like the reinventing words today, where they say like men who have babies.
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah.
We're just making stuff up now.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens when you try to reinvent the word election and to mean something else.
Right.
Like, it just means what it means. Of course, this really grates against, your human nature,
Right.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because we so desperately want to be master and commander of our fate.
Yeah, we want to be in control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The New American Standard makes it a little more clear. Confirm his calling and election of you. It's choosing of you.
Right.
So they're trying to make it more explicit, though that's not the most literal way of translating the Greek, but it's bringing out the idea of what election means.
Yeah. I think maybe people think like, oh man, this teaches like there's some virtue in you or whatever. It's why God chose you instead of other people.
Yeah.
But that's not really it. It's like you're the last kid that gets picked for a dodgeball or a
Right.
kickball.
Uh-huh.
Like you're the last kid, the scrawny kid,
Mm-hmm.
and God picks you.
Right.
There's nothing in you that
Yeah.
God that would help God.
Mm-hmm.
He just decided to set His love on you
Right.
because He wanted to.
Yeah, and he can do that because he's God.
Yeah.
He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And he's wise. He does it according to his own wisdom. He doesn't do it based on anything that he sees in us. It's based upon his own choice, his own purpose.
Pure. It's why it's called grace.
Yeah. He's got a purpose.
Again, if you redefine the word election, you're going to have to somehow redefine the word grace, no?
Right. Yeah.
Because grace can no longer be grace if God's choosing you based off your choosing of Him.
Mm-hmm. So he sends Christ because he knows that you're going to choose Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
And I think that a lot of people, the critics of this, they say, well, it's just arbitrary. I mean, God just arbitrarily chooses people. He has a purpose. He's choosing based upon his own purposes. Now, just because that purpose isn't, he saw that you would choose him, and so he chose you, doesn't mean that's arbitrary. Like he chooses based according to his own purpose and his own wisdom, and those are his own purposes, and he doesn't have to tell you why. He does what he does,
and everyone is undeserving.
Yeah,
that's the other thing.
Right.
Like, the people. There's like not there. It's not like there's two groups of people, the deserving of being chosen, and there's just one lump of the non-deserving.
Right.
And he chooses to rescue some.
Yeah. And if he didn't choose us, then we would all perish, because we're certainly not going to choose him. And if you say that there are people that will choose God, you're going against explicit teachings in the scriptures. No one seeks God. No, not one.
And, well, people seek God, lowercase g.
That's right.
Because we're spiritual beings.
They seek the benefits.
Yeah.
They seek the benefits of God.
Yeah. And this is how you see, idolatry all over the Bible, because people, we're wired for worship.
Right.
And so we'll seek after gods of our own liking.
Yeah.
The God people usually won't seek after is the one that's totally all-powerful, all-sovereign, the one who does whatever he pleases. That's the one people like to shake their fist at.
Right. It's because he's the real one.
Yeah, that's right.
That's because he's the true God.
Yeah.
He's not an idol of our own imagining. So we're supposed to confirm our calling and election. Yeah. And that word, it's translated in Hebrews as prove. So I think that's kind of the idea behind it. You're to prove your calling and election.
Right.
And that's where we go back up to verses 5 through 7. How do you prove your election? Do you, like Spurgeon said, if there was if everyone had an elect stamp on their back, he'd be lifting up people's coattails to see who the elect were. Is that what we do? We prove it by showing through our actions. Like if you've been saved, if the things that he's written about in verses 1 through 4 are true, that he's giving you this divine power for life and godliness, if you have all of his precious and very great promises, then it ought to show. There ought to be some kind of evidence for this. I left this out. It's in my notes, but I left it out in my sermon because we're running out of time. But I put, this is why I don't want to have anything to do with arrogant, obnoxious Calvinists who talk about election all the time, but they're jerks.
Yeah.
Like this is this oxymoron.
Yeah.
Like this graceless Calvinist.
Yeah, that's an odd thing. I was thinking about this gracelessness, which does mark those a lot in the Reformed world.
Yeah.
It's similar It's odd that I was thinking about this today now. It's almost providential. It resembles cancel culture.
Okay.
Graceless, merciless
Yeah.
law.
Yeah.
Right? They redefine what their law is, but it's merciless, graceless. And there is someone who's that way, and it's Satan.
Yeah.
And so he has acolytes in the world, and it's the cancel culture.
Yeah.
So if you're a graceless and merciless, raging Calvinist,
Yeah.
you may be more like your father, the devil.
Mm. Wow.
No?
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, there are theological geniuses
Oh, yeah.
that don't know Christ.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because that's not how you prove your calling and election. It's not through your theological knowledge. It's not, I can ace a Bible trivia. That's not what it means to prove, to confirm your calling and election. It's all based in the context of this passage. Like verses 10 and 11 are they're drawing us back up to verses 5 through 7. And if you are a genuine born again Christian, you're going to prove that by supplementing your faith with virtue with knowledge with self-control, right?
You're going to start to look like Jesus as he walked this earth as a man.
Yeah.
You're going to start to look like him.
Albert Martin, he wrote a little book called The Practical Implications of Calvinism, and he's just walking through this. This is his whole point is, if you're a Calvinist, I'm not asking, have you read all of the great Reformed writers? I'm asking, have you been transformed by actually seeing God? Like, have you actually had a vision of God?
But
do you actually know that God saves sinners?
You don't mean vision,
right?
I got to clarify it for people,
right? Right. Like
we don't.
Like you actually have seen Christ in the Scriptures.
Yes.
That He saves sinners, based purely on grace. It's not based on anything that you've done. It's not even based upon you trusting Christ. Like your faith even is a gift of God. That's what he means by a Calvinist. I'd recommend anyone who is a Calvinist, even critics of Calvinism, I would recommend pick up this little book, The Practical Implications of Calvinism, because he blasts these arrogant, obnoxious, belligerent, quote unquote Calvinists who take pride in their knowledge but don't actually prove it. Like, we talk about election because it's in the Bible, but what does that mean? It means that God graciously saves sinners apart from anything that they do. It's all based upon Christ. And if that's the case, then what kind of people should we be? We should be the people of verses 5 through 7.
Should be gracious.
And so we prove our calling and election by our lives.
Yeah.
Jesus says that not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven.
Yeah. Like,
you follow God's commands, and so you prove that you actually are the elect.
Yeah. Very good. That's great. That's good stuff. So cap it off with the very last part of this section, and then we got to wrap it up. We got to shut it down.
For in this way, there will be richly provided for you an entrance into the eternal kingdom of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Like, this is the whole goal. The whole goal is you actually be with Jesus. You are. It's. I like what one commentator said. He said, "This is no mere skin of the teeth entrance. Like, this isn't just by the, you get there just by a hair."
Right.
All right. He says the picture is of a patron who lavishly celebrates the arrival of a friend or a faithful servant at his home, or perhaps of a victor returning to his home city after the Olympic Games and being received with a triumphal welcome. Like, this is important. Like, this is not for someone who, Christianity is not for lazy people. Like, it's not a lazy man's religion. Like, this is something that you gotta put every effort into it. You have to strive for it. You're running a race. You're wrestling. You're not just boxing the air, right? You're training your body. You're beating your body into submission so that you follow Christ.
Yeah. Metaphorically beating your body into submission.
Right. I like all your little.
Right. Well, you got to clarify,
your little clarification.
I got to clarify for those that have read Dan Brown.
Right. Yeah, we're not talking
where
about.
He talks about
we're not
those
talking
guys
about the
that,
little whip that you're
whip
beating
whip themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what you're talking about.
But you're disciplining your body through supplementing your faith.
Yeah.
Because of the goal. The goal is crossing the finish line, and heaven erupts with cheers because you've made it home. Goodness, if that's the goal, then what should our effort be? Like, we should be putting forth all of our effort into these things. We put so much time and energy into all of these transient things. Like, we get hobbies that we just consume us.
Yeah.
And it's fine to have hobbies, but our all-consuming passion should be running this race and striving to enter into this kingdom. And I said at the beginning of the sermon, lazy, casual Christians don't enter into the kingdom of heaven. And that's from the scriptures. Paul says in Galatians chapter 5, if you practice these things, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven.
Right. So in that sense, those that would, what you're really getting at is they're not actually Christians.
They're not actually Christians. Yeah. If you are not obeying what Peter is saying here, you're
like the stolen valor guy.
You're a Christian in name.
He puts on the uniform out in public.
Yeah.
But he's never been a soldier.
Right.
He likes to pretend.
Yeah.
That's what the lazy Christian is.
Right. Yeah. You take the name of Christ, but you're not actually following Jesus. You're a pretender, and a pretender doesn't enter into the kingdom of heaven. It's like the parable that Jesus told of the marriage feast, right? The people who were invited, the Jewish nation, they reject it. So he sends out his servants, go everywhere and bring people in. So they go out to the highways and they bring in all these people. And he comes in, the host, he comes in, and there's a guy who's not wearing the wedding garment. He says, "Sir, how did you get in here?" And the guy has nothing to say. And he says, "Throw him out into the outer darkness." Like, that's a picture of someone who claims to be a Christian, but they're not clothed in the righteousness of Christ. And they're not wearing the wedding garment.
Yeah.
And so they're a pretender, and they get thrown out.
Very good. Good sermon. So one more? You've got one more?
One more. Yeah, verses 12 through 21.
Okay.
God willing, on Sunday.
One more, and then we'll be back in John. John chapter 17.
Yep.
So looking forward to it.
All right.
Thanks a lot, George. It's a good sermon.
Thanks.
It's very challenging. Hopefully it was a blessing to you, and it was challenging for you as well. It's our hope and our desire that this helps you to become conformed to Christ. Please go to our channel. You can like it. Go on Facebook. You can like and subscribe there, and help us get the word out. It's our hope and our desire that this would help you not only to become conformed to Christ, but to help you to engage with your friends and your family members. Maybe pass it along to them, have them listen as well, and then get together with them and talk about it. It could be a conversation starter for you guys. So it could help you to spread the gospel. So thanks a bunch for listening. We love doing this for y'all. Have a great rest of your day. Tuesday. Bye-bye.